Welcome to The Beat, everyone. I'm Ari Melba reporting for you on a start to the week that picks up with a counter note to how Friday ended last week in a scene that was really truly watched around the world, whether there were deliverables or not. Tonight, we begin with this extraordinary scene at the White House, European leaders gathering for this kind of show of support, but also what many European leaders and governments that have foreign policies at a kind of a crossroads or a disagreement with the Trump foreign policy doctrines, what they view as a kind of allied intervention. They want to persuade President Trump to continue to stand up for democracy, whatever aspects of the NATO alliance they can convince him are valuable, and quite specifically, the defense and livelihood of the man standing to the president's right who demonstrates the current longest and many say most courageous stand against the aggressive invasion by Vladimir Putin. Now, this began with Ukraine President Zelensky arriving for these talks. This is the first Oval Office meeting those two leaders have had since the now infamous and unusual clash they held before the cameras inside the Oval Office. Now, whatever you think of Donald Trump's policies and style, it is not enough to go through the world repeating the same view when the facts or situations change. And so while many people allied with Ukraine are still very critical of what Trump did on Friday, seeming to give Putin the world stage without getting anything back, and his overall approach to this war, in contrast to these two men's last infamous meeting, today was diplomatic, at times even cordial and warm. Some of that because of Zelensky's effort, which of course reflects every talent and energy he has to do whatever he can to move Donald Trump, to move this leader of the United States towards Ukraine's side right now. But it was, in all ways, a more traditional and more cordial meeting. Both leaders also discussed how the next step in ending this war, which Russia started, must ultimately mean some step towards a ceasefire and some sort of direct diplomacy with Friday's summit star, Vladimir Putin.
I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilateral.
We are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral.
I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat.
The trilat, as it's known in shorthand at Foggy Bottom in the State Department, is those three countries together. And again, while there are many people critical of Donald Trump's approach here, he doesn't have to hold meetings with anyone. Bookending Friday's unusual summit with today's more traditional White House diplomacy, one-on-one with Zelensky and then meeting with the other leaders, does reflect a kind of a balancing. As to those leaders, it was France, UK, and some other big European nations, kind of a NATO light style gathering, emphasizing across the board that they want to stand up to Putin, who is a dictator, and behind Ukraine as it fights on and on, year after year, for its survival.
We are all united here with Ukraine on this.
The bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided.
It's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine.
That's the view from those other leaders who are close to it and who have a very real world sense of the way that Vladimir Putin seeks to dominate the theater of foreign policy that they occupy. Now, at one point, Trump paused the meeting to step out and call Putin throughout the day. Trump also talked about his confidence in Vladimir Putin on all this. And then there was what appeared to be a hot mic moment, something that everyone in politics or media or any mic'd activity knows about, which is there are rules and regimens, especially at these kind of summits, because the leaders want to sometimes say things into the mic to the world and other times very clearly not. So what we saw, we're going to show you, it appeared to be something that Donald Trump didn't necessarily want to say to the world, but he was heard discussing that the Russian leader Putin does, in his estimation, still want a deal.
I think he wants to make a deal. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds.
As crazy as it sounds. We are joined now by Rick Stengel, former Undersecretary of State under President Obama, and Elise Labott, longtime foreign correspondent, host of the Cosmopolitics podcast. Welcome to both of you. Rick, walk us through what matters about the gathering today. And at the risk of oversimplifying, maybe Friday was a little more pageantry and today had a little more, at least, meat on the bone publicly, because we could hear the leaders talk more. What is to be understood from that shift from Friday to today?
So, Ari, I'm going to begin where you ended with the Trump quote, as crazy as it sounds, because
Sure.
I just want to pause for a second and talk about how unorthodox, i.e., crazy, the whole day is. The fact that it starts with Zelensky arriving and holding a press conference before they've had a conversation. This has now become sort of normalized behavior. This is extraordinarily dumb and terrible negotiating, because you're giving your position away in advance. It puts whoever you're talking to in a horrible position. And this has now become a kind of foundation of Trump negotiation. It's poetic and ironic that all of these European leaders came over. I think it's great to describe it as an intervention, which is what it is. But remember, all of this started with the idea back in 2014 that Ukraine wanted to become part of Europe and maybe eventually part of the European Union. And Yanukovych, the president, was overruled by Putin. He fled. The demonstrations started. And then Russia annexed Crimea. That's the genesis of all of this. And by the way, that's why this makes Putin nervous, because Putin has spent his career doing other things, trying to keep the US separate from Europe, to cleave between the two. And now you have all these European leaders. And by the way, that's why it's an intervention, because they said, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to be away from the United States. We need to help Zelensky. And by the way, they can be very helpful to Zelensky, because they can take a position that he can then say the Europeans are forcing on me, and I can go back to the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainian public is not going to go for a land swap.
Yeah. And you look at that discussion. Does Putin get even more land? Does he get rewarded, whether it was the world stage Friday, Elise, or a wider perception that he's really good at this? And again, to be clear, if you put aside the oddities of the Trump era, Vladimir Putin had his way with other leaders and Democratic administrations, to the point that people said, we need a reset, and there he goes again. And prior, more traditional Republican presidents, I believe, all those of us old enough to remember Bush saying, he looked into his eyes and he's a good man.
Into his eyes, he saw his soul.
Saw his soul. Thank you. Even better memory than me. And yet at the home front, as this has absorbed from Friday night, there are plenty of people saying, what was Trump getting and the United States by proxy getting out of Friday? So I want to play that view on Fox for you, and then get your view on everything tonight.
The way that it felt in the room was not good. It did not seem like things went well, and it seemed like Putin came in and steamrolled, got right into what he wanted to say, and got his photo next to the president and then left.
It was clear not much was accomplished. No ceasefire, no details, no questions from the press.
We do have a person on the other side, up to now, hasn't made a single concession of any consequence.
Elise?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You don't need to have people like Rick Stengel talk about it. Listen to Trump's own base on Fox News talk about how he didn't get anything. Look, Ari, this didn't even need to be a summit. It could have been a phone call, because everyone knew, I don't really think Trump went into that meeting understanding that Putin wasn't ready for a ceasefire. He wasn't ready to make a deal. I think he wasn't really served by his envoy, Steve Witkoff. And I don't think the world rehabilitated. He didn't rehabilitate Putin in the eyes of the world. They still see Putin for who it is. It might have rehabilitated him at home. I think, if anything, it hurt Trump more than it helped Putin. But listen, today, I think Trump went into that meeting with a little confidence with Putin. He was talking about wanting a ceasefire, talking about consequences. And then, as that Fox correspondent said, he got steamrolled. And, it's not the first U.S. president to be steamrolled, but I think Trump was intimidated by Putin. And he's talking about, I don't think a ceasefire is a good idea. Ari, let's just be honest. He couldn't get the ceasefire. It's not that he doesn't want it. It's not that he wouldn't take it. He can't get it. So now he's trying to spin it around. I think that Zelensky handled himself well today. I think he was, as you said, kind of on his best behavior, brought that letter from his wife to Melania Trump. He wore a suit. I think the Europeans, as much as they were coming to support Zelensky, as Rick said, I think they're also coming to back Trump up, to give Trump the confidence to say to him, and I'm sure that was in the meeting, we've got your back. We are united. You heard, I don't remember, I couldn't see the back of his head saying, it's Team US and Team Europe. We're one team together. And I think that Trump, as much as Zelensky needs it, Trump needs it as well.
Rick, how about that point, and the fact of geostrategy, which you've worked on, reported for a long time, but also done it inside the State Department, that these other countries don't have the luxury of thinking about a midterm or resistance strategies. They must deal with the U.S. as it is. And it's a Trump administration in the middle of what has become a very protracted war.
Yes, I think Elise's point was super smart. What the Europeans are coming to give Trump some support, some ballast for a position that may be against what Putin wants. I mean, again, my head was shaking today just where an American president says, you know, I'm going to have these conversations with you, but then let me get on the horn and talk to the Russian president about it and see, you know, I'm calling my daddy to find out what's going on.
He did say the same thing. I'm sorry. He did say the same thing to Putin about Zelensky that said, I'm going to get on the horn. Of course, he didn't call him in the middle of the meeting.
But did he? But at least
the Europeans, but
yeah. At least did he call him daddy?
He might have. He might have.
Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
I don't know how. I mean, and obviously Donald Trump is obsessed with appearing strong. I don't understand how it appears strong to have to call the Russian president and say, hey, here, let me tell you what's going on and what's your reaction to it. The other thing that's so insane about this, and Elise knows this, and Ara, you know it, is that any international negotiation, if it gets to an agreement, the agreement is made behind the scenes, and then you have the public meeting to ratify the agreement. That's what was so strange about the fiasco in Alaska, is that it seems like there was absolutely no preparation. And by the way, today, it seems like there's absolutely no preparation. I mean, the Europeans prepared, Zelensky prepared, but Trump seems, every day there's a meeting, he seems to find out something that he didn't know before that everybody else knows. Yeah, the Russians want land. No, the Russians don't want a ceasefire. I mean, it's really, the reason nothing gets done is because he doesn't know what even the framework of the discussion is.
Well, and then he's freelancing it, and he doesn't exactly have a war and peace cabinet that has the confidence of the civil service or the Pentagon. So, you know, the people who might be real close to it in his ear, some of them aren't even on the plane in the case of the Pentagon chief on Friday. So all of that is important. Elise, we appreciate both your fairness about the point that technically he was running these plays by both sides. He wants to be seen as a kind of Nobel-level honest broker, even though all of Europe is concerned that Trump is more of a more on the Putin side of it. And we appreciate both of your bonhomie about what was a harmless daddy reference amidst these serious times. Rick and Elise, thank you both. Appreciate you guys.
Good to be with you.
When we come back, Bill Barr, who of course was overseeing the Bureau of Prisons when Jeffrey Epstein died, has rushed to go first in telling his side of the story now that the Epstein subpoenas are finally landing on Republicans. What's up with that? Joyce Vance, one of the greatest prosecutor experts you could get, is my special guest later. But first, an Obama diplomat on what we just were talking about and what pressure is building on Trump as he continues to hold himself out as the big broker when we return in 90 seconds.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
You're
playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
We're not playing cards. We are a long ways tonight as Zelensky and Trump have just met for the first time since that now infamous clash. And we're joined by Ivo Daalder. He's a longtime geopolitics expert and served as U.S. ambassador to NATO under President Obama, of course, the alliance that is so central to what we witnessed today. I have questions, Ivo, but first, just give us your breakdown of what was important about today.
I think the most important thing today is that 7 very senior European leaders decided to stand side by side with President Zelensky and basically sent a message to President Trump. You need to choose. You're going to be with Putin or you're going to be with us, because we know where we stand and we're going to be here and we're going to do whatever it takes to help Ukraine. And we would love to have you on our side. We will say all kinds of nice things to you to have you on our side. But you need to decide. What happened on Friday was not according to the playbook that we had discussed. So you need to come back to our side. And I think that is a very important message. I have no idea whether it will work, but it is a message that needed to be sent.
How coordinated is that? How far back does that kind of thing go?
Well, it's coordinated in some sense. It goes back to February of 2022. The Western response, the European response, and the U.S. response, the Canadian response to the full-scale invasion has put all of these countries together in lockstep until January 2025, when the President of the United States, now Donald Trump, decided that he would, in 24 hours, end a war without really understanding what this war is about, which is not about territory. It's fundamentally about Russia's need and desire to control Ukraine through territorial conquest, but much more importantly, by deciding what the future of Ukraine looks like. That's what this war is about. And as a result, we know the Europeans get that. They understand that what is happening in Ukraine is a direct threat to European security. And by the way, any threat to European security, as we have learned in the 20th century, is a direct threat to American security. So the challenge that we now have is to get the President of the United States back onto where we were, to understand that Russia is the problem, Ukraine is our friend, it needs to be defended, it needs to be supported, and Russia needs to be opposed. Don't have summits with him. Don't jump on phone calls every 5 minutes unless the message is, Vladimir, stop. And by the way, something that he posted not that long ago. Indeed, stop. Stop what you're doing and start a serious negotiation to resolve this issue.
We learn things when we see these leaders together, even when, as we showed the last time, it was quite a clash, but you got kind of an unvarnished peek window into Trump's worldview. And how Zelensky tried to parry that. They clearly came back on both sides, as I said, to be quite clear and fair and accurate, trying to have a more diplomatic exchange today. Then Trump can't help himself, and when they're discussing the very serious issues around who's leading Ukraine during a war whose duration Russia is very much in charge of, Trump couldn't help himself. And I want to play this moment and get your take.
So you say during the war, you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake.
You like this idea?
No.
What do you see there?
So if the United States, every city from Boston to Phoenix to San Francisco to Washington, New York, and everything in between, is bombed every night by an adversary, when we are planning to go to an election, maybe we postpone them. But that's not what the president was talking about. We're not being bombed. We can't be comparing ourselves to what's going on in Ukraine. And it's not a funny thing, what's happening either in Ukraine and the fact that it can't have elections. The reason it can't have elections is because 20% of the country is occupied by an invader. If we were occupied and invaded by God knows who, maybe Canada, I guess, and we were losing that war, then perhaps we could have this discussion. But this is far too serious to joke about. There are already enough questions about whether we will have a good, free, and fair election in 2026 and indeed in 2028 to start making jokes about this one.
Yeah, important points there, Ambassador. Thank you. I'll tell folks what's coming up. The Epstein scandal is hitting Bill Barr, and he was forced under oath today. But is that what he wanted to do? We're going to get into that with Joyce Vance and the D.C. protests. But first, there is the Putin manipulation game, and we're going to get into that next. We are living through a very pivotal period here in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, even though the President of the United States seems to very clearly be making it up as he is going along. The evidence for that is Donald Trump's own words. How could you ever justify vowing all these sanctions or punishments, consequences for Vladimir Putin one week and walking them all back the next week as a plan? That's not something any rational actor would plan to do. And thus it looks like it wasn't the plan. Judge for yourself.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will those consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
Last week, you warned of what you called severe consequences if a 30-day ceasefire or any type of ceasefire were not agreed to by Russia. Will there be severe consequences? Does that change because
I don't think you need a ceasefire. Yeah.
Yes, there will be consequences. No, apparently there won't be. And he pivots to saying you don't need a ceasefire. So this is obviously not a strategy, not an intentional plan. It might be damage control for Trump not delivering what he thought would be easier, which is getting something out of Putin. And as we've been covering tonight, but what merits a lot more energy and understanding, both in our country, but really around the world, is this is something that Putin is effective at. And so as he continues to invade and bomb Ukraine and kill people and pose a wider threat to the NATO alliance and maybe the US, we are better served understanding this than just walking away from it. Experts talk about the former KGB officer's ability to manipulate, lie, and wield influence, even among the savvy world leaders that we deal with. Putin honed his skills at throwing opponents off balance during his KGB career. He's since become adept at gauging the vulnerabilities of each leader he meets, the Post reports. Today, there was that hot mic moment as well. Take a listen.
I think he wants to make a deal. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds.
That might offer a window into what Putin has convinced Trump is true. Both men have been caught lying about all kinds of things. But the nature of that statement on the mic is fascinating, and we wanted to dig in a little deeper with John Cipher, a former CIA official who served in Moscow. Welcome.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
What do you see there?
Well, I think you put it well up front. The problem is that Trump doesn't really understand these issues. He doesn't seem to have core values, and so everybody is trying to influence him. So Vladimir Putin, as a former KGB officer, has, made this one of his key points of trying to influence Trump, to try to have a summit, to treat Russia as it's a great power. And at the same time, the Europeans all ran to Washington because they understand that Trump doesn't understand the issues and that he might get ahead of his skis and do something that doesn't make sense and damage European security. So they run to try to influence him, and everyone is trying to play to either his ego or what he needs to hear, rather than him understanding the basic issues. And we've had presidents in the past, when they needed to do a hard deal, they did the hard work. You look at, Carter with Egypt and Israel, or Clinton in the Balkans, or Obama with bin Laden. These are hard issues that take a lot of work. Trump is the kind of guy that wants a lot of credit, but doesn't want to do the work for it.
So how does the CIA and other intelligence agencies prepare presidents and other officials for what Putin does, for really understanding this? Because if you take the hot mic at face value, and I've already tried to give the caveats, it would seem that Putin has convinced Trump of something that Putin wants to do for Trump that even Trump knows sounds, quote, crazy.
Well, I think your question would make sense under former presidents, but this president has decided that he knows better than everyone else. Now, of course, we all can see that it doesn't, and all the other leaders know very well that he doesn't. But normally, the intelligence services, the diplomatic service, the Secretary of State, all these people would be providing expert analysis. They would be talking to Trump about Putin's, what he wants to get out of this, what is his background, what are the issues that are important to the Russians, what are the issues that are important to the Europeans. They would prepare and prepare and prepare.
Let me press you a little. Do they try to inoculate you against a sophisticated psyop? Like, let's take something very basic, simple that a lot of people have dealt with. You're trying to haggle with the car salesman, and he pretends that you're winning. He says, "Oh my God, you're killing me, but I'll run it back there. But this is really..." If you've bought a couple cars maybe, or dealt with people like that, You know that trick a little bit, right? I imagine Putin has better tricks than that. Can you walk us through some of that, both because it's important and interesting?
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of the intelligence community that actually looks at personality profiles and tries to understand these people to help our policymakers, our presidents, understand and deal with foreign leaders. But there's also the point of just making sure you understand the issue. Where is Russia coming from? When Putin says what he wants and what he doesn't want, you have his personality and what he might be trying to play you with, but he also has core beliefs that matter to him and some that matter less. And so you want to prepare the president, you want to prepare the people around him to understand those things. And the problem is this president thinks he knows better. And I think he has beaten down his intelligence services so much that anyone who works on Russia or tries to influence him ends up getting their legs cut from under them. And so I think in this case, there probably was very little preparation for him because he doesn't want it.
Right. Well, you've been very clear-eyed about this, and you're speaking to an obvious irony, which is that that kind of leadership that cuts out experts, that is paranoid or arrogant, ultimately undercuts itself, which we've seen in so many autocracies. You cut out the experts. You want to have a win on a war summit or the economy, but you don't have anyone around who can help you do it. And so you're raising that as an interesting question. John Sipher, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.
Absolutely. Let me tell folks what's coming up. One big question: what do you do when there's masked agents and military roaming the streets? Civil disobedience, wall following the law. We're going to show you what some people are doing against what D.C. residents see as a Trumpian invasion. But next, the Epstein scandal hits Bill Barr. Joyce Vance is here. President Trump has leaned into this war and related diplomacy for the last several days. And yet Congress is now keeping Jeffrey Epstein and that scandal in the headlines, even though, of course, it hurts their fellow Republican president. But a key figure who was in charge of the Bureau of Prisons and the Justice Department during Epstein's controversial death and the ensuing scandal over missing videos and all the rest, actually went under oath today, former Attorney General Barr, facing questions from a Republican-led committee. Now, he was subpoenaed along with some other witnesses. What's striking is that even though he has obvious vulnerabilities, indeed at times he's admitted that mistakes were obviously made at that prison, he has rushed to the front of the list of people testifying. Now, he was the Attorney General, quote, during a time when Epstein was under investigation, the committee notes, and they had said they thought he might have knowledge or information relevant to the probe. And yet here's where things skip a beat, because Republicans want to appear to be investigating this. And yet in some key ways, they also are now being pulled into a lot of happy talk about how maybe everything's just fine. Because the Republican chair, James Comer, says Barr basically defended Donald Trump and told them things that are consistent with the story they've been telling in public. But you got to go back all the way to 2019 when Barr was in charge, and he said he would look into whatever happened in that now suspicious prison cell death. Now, he admitted, as I mentioned, a perfect storm of screw-ups, and then said he would personally review security footage. And having done that, he said on his authority, his credibility, nobody entered Epstein's cell the night he died. Problem is, Barr said that years ago, and then finally later, selective video was released, but not the most important video, which Barr's DOJ still claims was lost. The video that finally came out in the second term has faced a lot of questions about not only missing material, but inconsistencies that would suggest, CBS among others, that Barr was overstating his conclusions, which is they didn't have enough evidence to rule out whether anyone might have gotten into that cell. I want to be clear. That doesn't mean somebody did go in. It just means that Barr overstated the case. And that raises more questions like, why is a sitting member of the government in a rush to apparently clear what his own Bureau of Prisons did at the time? Why overstate that? But if you remember Bill Barr, you might remember the Barr letter that misrepresented the actual Mueller report and many other ways that he's tried to have it both ways. Meanwhile, the DOJ says it will start turning over more Epstein documents to the Congress this week. We're joined by former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance. Welcome.
Hey, Ari.
Nice to have you. We don't have a lot of detail yet about what Barr said. Not unlike the famous Barr letter, we're getting little political snippets. But let's start with the fact that the committee subpoenaed many people, including Eric Holder and President Clinton. Does it strike you as odd or raising questions that Barr rushed in there and they seem to have a very sort of aligned message strategy about whatever happened in there?
Well, someone had to go first, I suppose, and Barr is certainly a witness with knowledge about the relevant time period in the case. It's, I think, very difficult to figure out why, for instance, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch were subpoenaed, why Hillary Clinton would have been subpoenaed. That feels more like it's about politics than about law. But I agree with you. You know, having Barr first sets the narrative. And the narrative today, based on what we have heard about his testimony, is that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. So yet again, we have Bill Barr standing by his guy, standing up for Donald Trump. And as you point out, during the Mueller investigation, Barr really whitewashed the conclusions of that report in a highly favorable way for Trump when it wasn't warranted. So I think it's appropriate for us to reserve judgment here until we learn more.
And that Bill Barr's opinion of his former boss is, I think, far less probative, far less essential to a thorough investigation than whether he was part of an effort to minimize the open questions there. And I've been very careful to say we don't know what happened. But the original video that was most dead-on view of the door remains missing. So you've got a guy saying, I reviewed the lesser video and I cleared everyone. But if this were a independent, 9/11 style or Warren Commission style review, you'd really want to double check that, because Barr had every reason to want to say that the DOJ didn't do anything really wrong.
So I think that there are two separate issues here. And one is Donald Trump, whether he appears in the Epstein files. And apparently Barr has said did nothing wrong. But you point out this earlier issue, which I think many people have been unwilling to let go of. The fact that there are missing minutes of video right at the most, I think, significant point in time has led people to have questions about the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Some of the facts involved in, I think, the mathematics, the calculus involved in how he allegedly committed suicide have caused people to have more questions. And so, look, Bill Barr saw all the video, heard from all the witnesses, reached the conclusion that he reached, but perhaps more important than that conclusion would be hearing him explain why he believes it's valid, given the problems with missing evidence that can't be accounted for.
Yeah, and here was Comer now. We'll play that. Take a look.
There have to be a lot of documents. So I'm under the impression that they're gathering all these documents, and that's what the subpoena called for. And I think the administration knows this is what Congress wants, Republicans and Democrats. And I think President Trump has said clearly he wants to, release all the documents. So we're going to get the documents.
Is it odd that Comer is echoing Donald Trump's claim he wants to release documents that he has refused to release? And now they're playing a classic Washington game of saying, well, we'll move them from this building to that building. We'll move them from DOJ to Congress. There are separate real equities questions about how much should be released, as always. But what does it tell you that he's faking it? I don't mean it disrespectfully, but he seems to be faking an investigation where the beginning, middle, and end is repeating Donald Trump is all good.
It feels like some pretty weak sauce, right? The conclusion comes before the evidence is in. And Ari, when I issued a subpoena, I'm not Congress, I was a federal prosecutor, but when I issued a subpoena, I meant for the person receiving it to comply with it in a timely fashion. Here, the Justice Department has had a period of weeks to at least begin compliance. The subpoena's due date is tomorrow. And what we heard from Comer today is, well, maybe the Justice Department will start to turn over documents to us, but it's complicated. Well, that's why you get a little bit of lead time on doing these things, right?
Right. And so what we're seeing is, after weeks of this really diverging and dividing the Republican Party, it appears to be an effort to slow walk it while repeating certain talking points. Again, I will adjust our reporting if they release some documents or better testimony. We're open-minded, but I got to call it as it comes. Joyce, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ari.
Absolutely. When we come back, how some D.C. citizens are lawfully fighting back. President Trump trying to expand his powers over Washington, D.C., and we're going to show you some striking video on the reality and how people are trying to fight back. Some of this can be disturbing, but federal agents in this video obtained by Washington Post were clearly violently detaining a food delivery driver. This was over the weekend. And so local residents tried recording the incident and also doing something that you can do in a democracy, which is make sure people acting under the color of law are held accountable. Here's the exchange with masked agents.
Get out of our city. Choke yourself out. We're right here, man. Answer questions, bro. Why are you guys here? Do you even have identification on you? Who are you guys? What agency? Yo, can we see some badge? Who are you guys? Can we
you guys the cops who shut the fuck.
Are you? Who are you? I want to see some badge work.
Do I have to answer to you? You got to answer to somebody.
Swearing at citizens, asking if they're cops, and saying when they don't have to answer to them is not what you expect in a country governed by the rule of law. Those videos bearing witness lawfully, peacefully, by the way, is just one way some are fighting back. We're going to fit in a break, but when we come back, we are looking at how many are taking on Donald Trump's efforts to control museums and history itself.
After naming himself chairman of the Kennedy Center, today, President Trump announced this year's honorees.
Yeah, give him something stupid to do to keep him out of trouble. Hosting award shows is what he envisioned being president is in the first place.
Donald Trump increasingly trying to take control of culture and stifle artists who disagree with him. And we turn to a big name in the culture, the LA radio icon, Big Boy, host of the nationally syndicated Big Boys Neighborhood. Heyo, welcome.
Hello there, my brother.
How you doing?
I'm doing amazing, Ari. I can't complain, bro.
What do you think when you see the government, whoever it might be, in this case, President Trump,
right,
trying to tell the Kennedy Center, artists, culture, how to be?
Man, we've seen censorship in hip hop or in different genres before, but this is beyond. This is beyond. It's almost like, and we say it all the time, bro. It's like a dictatorship, you know. And the one thing that we had was we were, you know, you could be a storyteller. Your art was storytelling, and now you get to a point, bro, where it seems like everything is becoming a cutoff. Everything is becoming a problem, and not only from the so-called top dog. It's like a lot of pettiness that goes on. When I see some of the people or some of the things that get hit, I'm really like, we have time for that?
Right. That's where his head is at. That's his priority. Chance the Rapper is an artist you know well.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Has links to the Obamas, but also is really a positive person. He's not picking a lot of fights. But we had him on Friday, and he was talking about what it means to make art and speak in this MAGA Trump time. Take a look.
It's an incredibly important time to be honest, to be grace-giving, but also to be bold in our approach and how we speak about the truths that are out there. So I agree totally that like this is a different time to be making music. Whatever your, you know, heavenly gift is, I think you're supposed to use it towards the movement.
Beautifully put. Do you see this as something artists are conscious of right now, or are we at a point where people also just tune out, which we've seen happen in other countries? Things get dark enough and people say, I'm out.
You know what, this may sound crazy, but I don't think that the artists are paying as much attention as when we had like the Boogie Down Productions, the KRS-Ones, where you had this edutainment and you had, you know, Public Enemy that was speaking. You know, I think now the artists are a little detached.
Yeah.
And then if they're not detached or, you know, it doesn't concern me, you know, and we don't see the issues. And then plus, you know, is radio going to play it? You know, who's going to stand behind it? Is it popular for me to go and say something, you know? So I think it's a little different. That's why the ones that do speak out, you know, in the genre as far as hip hop or in any genre, even with D.L. Hughley when it comes to, you know, even having his comedy, but also having a social voice, those are the people that I kind of look towards. Everybody can't get on the front line, and I feel like everybody doesn't choose to be on the front line as much now.
Respect. 45 seconds left. TV's faster than radio.
Come on now.
How are you feeling about this digital explosion that has changed so much? It's added more options, but also noise. You are doing it up big, and a lot of top people still come to you.
Right.
But radio is respectfully old school.
Yeah. And it is. You got to know how to maneuver, you know, and you have to change with radio. Like my radio show has become pretty much a television show. Every piece of audio must come with a visual piece to it as well. I get more recognized anywhere in the world because what I do also on social media or on YouTube or things like that. So
If
you
I
gotta know how to
may,
use it.
If I may,
Please do.
they once said, video killed the radio star.
Yes, man.
Sounds like Big Boy, the radio star, became a TV YouTube star.
And you have to. And I think about that video killed the radio. I think about that so much. I'm like, oh, what's the next thing? You know? But it's still a great medium, and I do it well. But yeah, you gotta have some of this and some of that.
Yeah, 100. We love you coming by, Big
Thank
Boy.
you, brother. I appreciate
much
you.
success. Thanks to everyone watching.